Good morning. I'm excited to be here for the third day of ALT. And today we have Cecilia, Goria and Matt East, and they're going to give a presentation on when pedagogy meets technology, developing a community of inquiry for digital teaching and learning. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Great, excellent. So yes, thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm Cecilia Goria, Digital Learning Director, and I'll have the easy job here to present, whereas Matt East will from Thales, the education lead from Thales Education, he'll have the much harder job to answer your questions later on. So the title of our presentation, Pedagogy Meets Technology, Developing a Community of Inquiry for Digital Teaching and Learning. And as a brief overview of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about a number of pedagogical priorities or needs that really emerged prominently during the first phase of COVID, the one that was called in the literature emergency remote teaching, and during which, if we all, at least here at Nottingham, we experienced that during that period, not much technology was our concern. Our concern at that time was get the tech going and get the academics online, really. But pedagogy definitely became much more prominent in the subsequent phases of COVID. In the one that I'm referring to, or I called elsewhere, adapted remote teaching, and I'm referring really to the first semester of 2021. So emergency remote teaching was spring semester of 1920, that horrible March when we were all told to go online. Adapted remote teaching is the first semester of 2021. Consolidated remote teaching, second semester of 2021, and then the current semester that I called skilled remote teaching, because hopefully we can build on the skills gained in the previous phases, and really refers to the current 21-22 autumn semester. I will then look at the pedagogical solution that we resorted to in order to address those priorities, and the digital solution that helped us implement that pedagogical solution, the COI, Community of Inquiry framework. And then finally, I will be looking at the impact of our work. So looking at pedagogical priority or necessity, really, the challenge of mixed mode teaching, which indeed was triggered by COVID-19, but really, as we all know, we in a way want to carry it beyond in a kind of much more shaped up way. So when we faced the first challenges of mixed mode teaching, we really needed to combine face-to-face and online teaching. We needed to combine it in a flexible way, because at that time we didn't really know who was isolating and who's not. But beyond COVID, we may want to keep that flexibility, because for other reasons, perhaps much less dramatic than COVID-19, people may want to have, students and staff may need to have that flexibility. We needed something that was good for synchronous as well as asynchronous teaching, that it was compatible for multiple platforms, and indeed that took into account the diverse learning context of our students. Something that even without COVID, if we went mixed mode, would still be very much prominent. Pedagogical priority number 2, interaction with content. And what I mean really is deep learning around primary and secondary sources, which is a common, it is indeed a pedagogical priority in the arts and humanities. And what do I mean by deep learning? Well, close reading, critical thinking, identifying bias, contextualizing resources. And this happens where? Well, in foreign language studies, via written or spoken language, so text or videos, classical languages, mainly via text, arts department, music departments via manuscripts, art and music scripts, so via images, articles, lists, text, narrations, videos. So really what we asked our student as a pedagogical priority is to unpick resources to uncover their hidden meanings. Pedagogical priority number 3, engaging our students. Just after the first phase of lockdown, we circulated a survey, and one of the questions was, how would you rate the students' engagement with online learning during that period? And you can see here in this simple graph that 1 being not engaged, 5 being engaged, 5 scores a 0%, and the 2 scores the higher percentage, which is very much low, very pretty low on the engagement scale. So student engagement really became a priority. So what pedagogical solution we resorted to? Well, community building, and we used the community of inquiry framework to guide us in the community building process. For those who are not familiar with the community of inquiry framework, well, what it tells us is that learning happens at the intersections between social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. Social presence refers to interpersonal interaction and is expressed via open communication, group cohesion, or commitment, students' commitment for personal and affective commitments. Cognitive presence refers to interaction with content and is expressed via reflection, information exchange, connecting ideas, critical thinking, deep learning. And then finally, teaching presence. Teaching presence really refers to learning design, in a way, the traditional role of the teacher. And it's expressed via design and organization, facilitating discourse, direct instructions. Our digital solution to implement our pedagogical solution to address our pedagogical priorities, Talis Elevate. Talis Elevate is an annotation platform for collaborative and personal notes, and I will say more about this later. It supports documents, PDFs, audio files, PowerPoints, images, videos, YouTube links. It can be used synchronously and asynchronously. It can be used for preparing for a session, so asynchronously, during, synchronously, also as a follow-up to a session, so asynchronously again. And it can be used face-to-face as well as online. As an example, this is an example of a text which was the tutor uploaded to the platform. On the right-hand side, you see the comments of the students, which are color-coded with the highlights on the text. Just below the red circle, you see, so all the comments have been anonymized, apart from the one just below the circle and one further down, where is the comment of a tutor. We've had permission to show his name. And this is just to show you how the tutor in this case has established some sort of dialogue by replying to students' comments on the resource. Use of an image. This is a bit of kind of an exceptional ways of using an image. It's a user script, and you have again the comments on the side, student comments, which are color coded with the pins on the image this time. In this example, there is no dialogue between the students and the tutor, because this particular resource, this particular activity was used in preparation for a face-to-face seminar during the time, even if it was COVID, but during the time when it was actually mixed mode and we could do some face-to-face teaching. The very same kind of activity was then moved totally online in the subsequent phase of COVID, when no face-to-face teaching was no longer permitted. When face-to-face teaching was no longer permitted. A more traditional image, again, comments on the side and color-coded pins. And finally, an example of a use of a video, comments on the side, and you can probably see a bit fainted at the bottom of the video a series of colored bars, and they correspond to the color-coded comments. And they are bookmarks. So if you click on a document, on a comment, it takes you directly to that point at the in the video. Pedagogical strength. Well, it fostered interaction with peers and tutors, sharing and collaborating towards a common goal, the unpicking of the resource. It fostered engagement with content, anonymously and not. Participation with the activities, deep learning and sustained discourse and reflections, element of that teaching presence that I mentioned earlier. Again, teaching presence, teacher input, triggers and guidance, facilitating discourse. Formative feedback through that kind of dialogue that I briefly mentioned earlier. And as we will see, monitoring by analytics. And I hope you recognize here the three presences of the Community of Inquiry framework. Teaching presence sustained by analytics. So here you have the graph showing the learning behavior of a whole module. You have on the left-hand side the list of the resources in a module. And then for each resource, first one, as you see the little pink dot on the left-hand side, it shows you the number of personal notes, and personal notes are personal, so no tutors or peers can see them, only the author. Number of published or collaborative or class comments, and the number of hours and the time spent on the resource. But the analytics go also much more granular. On a different screen, and here I highlight the fact that you can tell which part of your resource is being used more or less. And also it goes granular in terms of students. I will not show it here because of privacy reasons, but there is a tab in this module. We had 44 students, and again, in the tab, the students tab, you can see the number of notes, personal and class notes per student, and the number and the time spent on a particular resource. Impact and evaluation. During our pilot, we had 106 modules involved with more than 1,500 students registered, with more than 8,500 class annotations and 8,000 private notes. And what is more relevant is that 65% of our users actually actively used the annotation. Didn't only register to the platform, but they were in fact active. We had a staff survey, a student surveys, and a number of case studies that helped us build our business case. The prominent features coming out of the staff survey was that the platform fostered interaction, and a very welcome feature, it is very easy to use. Prominent from the student surveys was the quote here, "Discovery was good for discovering peers' perspective and ideas." And then the case studies. Student engagement from the case studies was high, or at least higher. It was good for inclusivity and for empowering students, especially the anonymity function. Pedagogic fit. It was good for fostering interaction outside contact hours, so that asynchronous element that I mentioned earlier. Engagement with primary resource, which is really the aim of the platform. A list for us. Pre-seminar preparation. Move away from textbook and slides. Student-led teaching. And an unexpected benefit that was highlighted was that it helped creating a link between asynchronous and synchronous teaching. Specific benefits during the pilot, so during COVID-19, it was a good replacement for physical presence, especially when, as I said, we started in mixed mode, but then we moved towards online only, still uncertain what was happening. Suitable for both face-to-face and online, so referring to the first phase. A good vehicle for getting to know students, so creating that community of learners that is part of the Community of Inquiry framework. Conducive to informal conversations, again, good for community of learners, community building. Platform, a good platform to enable co-creation of knowledge, so that cognitive presence that I mentioned earlier. And I hope that, again, you can recognize features of cognitive teaching and social presence. Our journey. Well, we started with setting our pedagogical priorities. We then looked for a pedagogical solution, and then for a digital solution that would help us implement the pedagogical solution. So the pedagogical solution was the community of inquiry, so with the three presences, social, cognitive, and teaching. The digital solution was Talis Elevate. We started small in the Department of History. We then increased usage, extending it to languages, and then to other disciplines such as music, for instance, across the faculties of arts and humanities. We established a strong partnership with Talis Education for the implementation process, so for the onboarding and support, for the development of certain features. In fact, there is a specific features that was developed out of one of our requests, for creating an output, and especially for planning the evaluation process. So what's next? The rollout. So the Faculty of Arts has committed to a fully fledged license to support the use of Talis Elevate across all modules in the faculty. But we're also extending it to other faculties. So I'm at the moment dealing with the Faculty of Science and the Faculty of Social Sciences, who are piloting it now in their own faculties. We are also piloting the extension of the use for our tri-campus teaching. Now, the University of Nottingham has 2 international campuses, one in China, one in Malaysia, and we have some modules which are taught tri-campus, and Talis Elevate provides the perfect platform for bridging the geographical distance in a kind of focused manner, so to speak, around specific resources. And we're also starting, in fact, a new research project which will specifically look at the learning behaviors around annotations, and therefore will give us much more insight on how our students learn. So this is it from me. So thank you very much for listening. And I would direct you to a podcast where Professor Helen Lovett, professor in classics, she actually talks about the use of Talis Elevate for her classes in conjunction with Padlet. And she makes a very good argument for using the two platforms with two different purposes, but yet complementing each other. So that's the link to the podcast, the QR code, and of course our email addresses in case you need to contact us. Thank you very much. So, Sarah, are you coming?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cecilia. That was an absolutely fascinating presentation. If invite people to put any questions they have into the chat. I thank you, Kathy, for clapping there. And also, of course, Matt, if you would like to say anything in the chat, then you're very, very welcome to do so. Will you share all of the resources in Discord afterwards, Cecilia?
Yes, I will. And are the questions just via the chat, or are there any questions via the webcam and the microphone, or is it all via chat?
It's all via chat.
It's all via chat. So is there any in particular that
So that's Matt just saying thank you to everybody and what a great project it was. I would like to ask, Cecilia, I noticed that you had a small class, but you had lots and lots of students. Does this scale to large classes of students?
Yes, it does, absolutely. In fact, we did started in our very first pilot, because even the pilot itself can be seen in phases, really. But when we actually started, we started in the Department of History, where it was around 200 students, really. And that's where It was, and it was actually pre-COVID, as a matter of fact. It was way pre-COVID, but the tutor, and it was a team of tutors in history. They used it to engage students around manuscripts, and they found it extremely useful. And that's when then a much kind of fully shaped pilot. That's when I took on board the pilot and kind of shaped it into being a full project, really. But yes, absolutely, for large classes is not a problem at all.
Perfect. And we've got lots and lots of questions coming in now. So Fiona Handley, did you face any challenges in getting academic staff to take up and expand the use of new technologies?
Yes, so this is actually a very, very good question, and I've only very briefly mentioned the easy to use kind of aspect. So one of the plus point, absolutely, of Talis Elevate is the intuitivity of the platform. So it's literally, Talis Elevate would give us the support. They do give us the support, but in fact, we found that with some online tutorial, if needed, people can get on very, very well. So one of the major, one of the success was actually the fact that people were introduced, they were given by people, I mean academics, they were given the instructor account, and that's it. They went on it and they uploaded their resources and they started using it. And it's easy to use not only for staff, but for students too. So it's very, very easy to use. So you don't need any training for the students. You don't need any specific account. In fact, Matt could well step in at this point and talk about the integration with VLEs. We use Moodle, and it integrates very well with our Moodle. So it's that kind of easy access and easy to use aspect is very, very very prominent.
Perfect. There's a lot of other questions coming in. Simon's actually asking one. Did you look at any other tools besides Talis Elevate?
So specific, well, as we know, I mean, we use Teams here at the university, and there is the old Google Documents. So there's been a lot of experiments, by sharing documents in Teams, images in Teams, or on Google and so on. Although the Google platform is not supported by the university, but some people have been using it for their own. But we've seen that the beauty really of Talis is the fact that it brings that focus on a specific resource, and it kind of keeps the students in the virtual classroom, so to speak. It creates a virtual class around that resource, and that is absolutely a plus point. So anything else that we looked at, and in particular we looked at, as I said, a collaborative tools which sometimes may be actually quite strong, and powerful, such as Teams. OneNote, for instance, is extremely powerful, so to speak, but it could be in a way too powerful. Whereas Talis Elevate is, as I said, easy to use, very much focused on the activity, and it works very well. And it did work, yeah, very well.
Well, that's perfect. Look, Cecilia, thank you very, very much for this presentation. I hope everybody will head over to Discord and continue the conversation, particularly about community of inquiry. I'm sure you'll be there, and I'm sure Matt will be there. And I'd just like to invite everybody in the audience to use your favourite emoji to thank the presenters very, very much.
Thank you very much. So what do I do? Do I just leave this room?
We'll close we'll stop the recording.
Yeah. Excellent.